Most people think therapy is about having a breakthrough. It's not. Breakthroughs feel powerful, but change comes from repetition, regulation, and practicing something different when it matters. This is metatherapy, where we don't just talk about mental health, we build the skills that make it work. Before we go further, a quick note. While I am a licensed therapist, this is educational content. It is not therapy. It's not personalized mental health treatment, and it's not a substitute for working with your own licensed professional. If you're looking for individualized support, Metatherapy can actually help you with that too. We offer customized therapist matching at metatherapy.guide, designed to connect you with a clinician who actually fits your needs, goals, and personality. Here, what we're doing is strengthening your psychological capacity. So whether you're in therapy or not, you're building skill, clarity, and emotional maturity. Every week, Metatherapy has a rhythm. Meditation Mondays is structured psychological meditations to prepare for therapy, process after sessions, or stabilize when you can't be in one. Therapy Tech Tuesdays is when we have practical guidance on using technology intentionally to support mental wellness. And then Thursday Thinkers is conversations with therapists and experts about what actually creates sustainable change. This isn't inspiration, it's implementation. Let's get to work. What did you dream about last night? Most of you either don't remember or you remember something strange enough that you would have chalked it up to the pizza you ate at midnight and moved on. That's probably what I would have done a few years ago too. But here's what's been sitting with me. Modern psychotherapy, the profession I work in and our guest Ara works in, and we both deeply believe in, has largely walked away from dreams. Not because we proved that they were meaningless, but because they were hard to measure, hard to replicate, hard to put into a randomized controlled trial. So we left them on the table. What if that was a mistake? Sigmund Freud, and say what you will about Freud, called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. Carl Jung built entire frameworks around the symbolic language of dreams. And here's the thing. Long before either of them put pen to paper, virtually every major culture and tradition on Earth was paying very close attention to what happened in the sleeping mind. There's a 2019 survey in psychotherapy that found that fewer than 1 in 5 practicing therapists reported using dream work regularly in clinical sessions, despite a significant body of research supporting its efficacy in trauma processing and meaning making. My guest today has built a career at the crossroads of all this. He's a journalist, a teacher, a writer, a licensed psychotherapist. By the way, these are all my favorite things. And in his recent book, he makes a case that it simultaneously is ancient and urgently current. The case is this: the unconscious mind is not noise. It is the place where your habits live, where your trauma is stored, where the deepest knowing takes shape, and your dreams are its primary language. Whether you come to that from a clinical lens, a spiritual one, or just plain curiosity about what your brain is doing for 8 hours a night, he has something very important for us to hear that I think will matter to you. Please welcome Ara Tremley. Welcome, Ara.
Well, thanks very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So, as I mentioned, you have a background that spans journalism, teaching, Bible study, psychotherapy. That's a pretty wide arc. Can you tell me a little bit about what's the through line? What has been pulling you towards the intersection of the mind and meaning?
Okay. Well, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, I started out as a journalist, but during all that time that I was an active journalist, I was also studying psychology. It wasn't my major in college, but I was always very interested in it. And not coincidentally, I was always very interested in my dreams. And I was one of those people I would write down my dreams and then try and tease out what they might mean.
Mm-hmm.
Did a lot of early reading in Jung, especially. Found the book Man and His Symbols extremely helpful in that, and was able to start making sense out of my dreams. So so all along that was there. And when it's interesting because when my journalism career, which was spanned about 20 years, when it started to come to an end, or the opportunities weren't there in the early 2000s, I realized that, maybe I should really, let's go whole hog with psychology, and let's get the degree, let's get out there and start helping people. So that's when I went back to graduate school. Yeah, again, so I have a lot of graduate school, way too much, and a lot of us can say that. So went back to graduate school, but all the time taking this love for dreams and this deep curiosity about dreams with me, and interesting, as you referenced, in all my training, never once were dreams mentioned, not even once. And I thought that was, except possibly when we studied Freud, or when we talked about Jung a little bit historically. So this seemed ridiculous to me, but since my experience was my dreams were very significant and they were helpful to me, and if I looked at them, they were very helpful to me. So once I got into practice, I started doing a number of things. One of them was I got certified as a hypnotherapist,
Mm-hmm.
and also, which we also call the Royal Road to the Unconscious Mind, hypnotherapy. But I realized that, okay, why am I, just because I was trained this way doesn't mean I have to ignore the really royal road to the unconscious mind, which is our dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started work with my clients in many areas. I would simply ask them about their dreams, and collected quite a bunch of their dreams in my clinical notes, some of which form the basis of the book that I'm here to promote shamelessly. But that's really how it all came together. The dream part was really the part that came first, and the psychology part came later, but they intersected perfectly. And so that's why I'm here today, having written my book, Dreaming God's Way, which looks at exactly the issues we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think there definitely, I mean, as you were talking about your education and not having dreams even mentioned once, I cannot also remember a single time during my master's program where dreams were even mentioned. Perhaps in some of the historical stuff, but it was almost referenced as, oh yeah, that's what they used to do. Like, that's old school. Yeah. That there's no value there anymore, right?
Yeah.
So so obviously the dreams came first for you. So you were kind of like thinking forward about, this is an area that's been helpful for me. I'm guessing personal experience, and maybe would be helpful for others. Was there a particular client experience that made you realize that, yeah, I'm onto something here? There is something missing from the master's education, for instance. There is something missing from the therapy offices across this country. Like, was there a particular instance or a particular example that kind of came forward that sort of confirmed what you were suspecting?
Yeah, there have been a number of them, but the probably, this is very interesting. This was maybe 10 years ago, but a woman came to me and she said, and she was just a fascinating woman. She had been a Secret Service agent. But she was someone who was very interested in her dreams and very much wanted a Jungian therapist. Now, I mean, in certain ways I was Jungian, but I couldn't really claim that was my specialty. But on the other hand, when she said she wanted to look at dreams, I said, this is right up my alley. This is exactly what I want to do. And working with her, we worked with most clients. I'll work with some with their dreams and some with their some life experiences and other types of things and history and trauma and all the things that we look at. But with her, it was all about her dreams, and this was just this was like my dream come true. I'm actually going to be able to do this as a therapist. So this was not her dream, but one of I'm going to read to you a dream that is in my book because it's a dream from one of my clients. This is not the same client, but it was one of those kind of seminal moments for me that like the dream gave me everything I needed. So was a middle-aged woman patient whose parents had divorced during her adolescence, and she had herself experienced a traumatic divorce and herself, and just recently, and she recounted this dream that she said had recurred many times. So, as we know, when dreams will recur many times over, our mind is telling us, "Hey, this is really important. Pay attention." All right, so here's the dream. I am walking at twilight down a long row of trees toward a cheerful, brightly lit house at the end of a country lane. As I draw near, I can hear children playing, and through a large picture window, I can see a loving couple doing ordinary things, conversing, setting the table, or embracing. I press my face to the window and watch their happiness with great longing, but I am invisible to them, and I must leave before the night falls. And that was the end of the dream. This was so. I mean, we see the strong emotions here of longing and sadness and happiness denied. She was in therapy for depression, but this dream opened the door. This dream was the why. It's because as you probably know, a lot of our clients and patients, we're going to be applying all kinds of therapeutic machinations, but they want to know why. And this dream, it was clear to her this is why. The house and the country and the love. So dreams are all about symbols. And for her, the house and the country and the loving couple symbolized what she had lost as a child, because she did lose that as a child. Her father just walked out on the family, and what she had lost later on in her adult life from her husband, who also walked out. The idea that she was invisible, that is not part of the happiness. It was. When I said that to her, she said, "Yes, that's exactly right. I'm not part of that. I can never be part of that." And I said, "No, you really can be part of that, because that's what your heart's longing for. That's what you really want." And then the night falling, of course, symbolized her falling into depression. But I said, "Look, but you're here in therapy, and there's light at the end of our tunnel, and this is our first step." So it was an extremely revealing first step that through this dream that enabled us to really do successful therapy. She is this was a while ago, but she is, as far as I know, very happily married now and has a family.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
maybe she's in the house now.
Indeed.
That's awesome. Great work.
Indeed. Yes.
Great work.
Yes.
You've said in the book that the royal road to the unconscious is our dreams. Can you, for those who don't really understand the connection between dreams clinically, can you walk us through what's happening psychologically and clinically when we dream? And then as a follow-up, how does that connect to real world? How does that then, like, why is it in the dream? Like, what's going on? What's the mechanism there?
Yeah. So, boy, I wish I could walk through in less than an hour what is happening in dreams.
But just at a high level. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, the dreams are, as we just said, access to the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind doesn't have all the filters that we have in our conscious life and our conscious existence. So there are things that we'll be in a situation and we'll have a thought, but but our filter says, "Oh no, you can't share that thought, or you can't dwell on that thought." So you just go by it. But your unconscious mind has no such filters on it. It it's it is what it is. It is who you are at your core. It's like, no, this is what I really think. So your unconscious mind is much more is not shackled by that. So it can be much more creative, and it can help you do things like solve problems that your conscious mind couldn't. One of the examples of that I give in this book is the golfer Jack Nicklaus, um, one of the great golfers of all time. Okay, he tells a story of he's playing in a tournament and he's having problems and he's not doing well, and he thinks there's something wrong with his swing, but he can't figure out what it is. So the day's play is over. He goes back out on the range and he hits like 100 golf balls trying to figure out what is going wrong with my swing, and he cannot figure it out. But that night he has a dream, and in the dream he dreams about his swing, and in the dream he is able to see himself what's going wrong with his
Mm-hmm.
swing. He's able to see it. And so and as he tells it, the next day he went out and he applied this in a tournament and he did much better. So he knew all along, he knew what was wrong, but he could not access it. His conscious mind couldn't access it, but his unconscious mind, once the conscious mind went to sleep, his unconscious mind said, "No, here it is, here it is," and sure enough, there it was, and great success for him because of that.
Absolutely, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, I think, and I don't know if this is a good metaphor or not, but in kind of modern technology, we have virtual reality experiences and gaming and things like that. And in some ways, that's kind of like a sandbox of dreams, right? Of like the brain being able to model out various scenarios and also
Yes.
communicate with us certain things that maybe where our defenses are putting up and not allowing us to sort of do the work in our awake life, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So for our therapists who are in the audience, who also didn't get any training on dreams and maybe are, not trained in, psychoanalytic work, Jungian work and so forth.
Hmm.
What does dream work look like in a session? Can you walk us through what it can look like and how it can
Hmm.
be weaved in?
Yeah, especially if you don't have that training. The most useful way to look at dreams is a story that the mind is telling itself.
Mm-hmm.
They are a story that the mind is telling itself. That's a very useful way to look at it because really it'll take you back to, your high school or college English classes where you had to interpret what was going on in stories and get the deeper meaning of what was going on in the story. So if you look at it, if you as a therapist, instead of thinking, oh, what is this symbol supposed to mean? And instead of doing that, if you look at it as a story, then it'll make sense because, and your client or your patient will help you make sense of it. Because if you say, sounds like you're telling a story about your childhood and about what happened. Yes, exactly. That's something like this did happen. They'll pick up on it right away. It's really amazing. And I should mention, by the way, that, one of the things that trips us up when we try and interpret dreams is the whole idea of symbols having a universal meaning. And now, yeah, there are certain basic symbols that are, yes, Jung said, these are archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
They symbolize certain things for us. But even those even Jung had to admit that symbols are extremely subjective. Because what a symbol means to me is not going to mean what the symbol means to you. And if I'm interpreting your dream, I have to know what that symbol means to you. So if you're telling me about a dream and a cross appears in the dream, all right, well, I'm a Christian, so okay, the cross, it means Jesus, and it
Right.
means the church.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe, to you, the cross is the Red Cross, Or maybe
Right.
you're a truck driver and maybe you come to a lot of intersections and the cross just suggests an intersection to you. Any of those could be right, and there are many more interpretations could be put on that. But I'm not going to really know what's going on in your dream unless I know what that symbol means to you. So,
Right.
there are literally hundreds of dream books out there that allege to tell you what every symbol means. And I hate to say it, but they're just nonsense.
Yeah.
That's not the way it works. Every dream is individualized, and the best interpreter of a dream is the dreamer himself. And that's,
Hmm.
and, as a therapist, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to say, "Oh, what's the story being told here? What does this mean to you? And, how is the symbol of the cross meaningful to you? And then, and what is the story being told here? If you do those two things, you're going to you'll get really far in terms of delving into their unconscious mind, their unconscious processes, and what's really driving some of the things, perhaps the challenges that they're facing that you're trying to help them overcome."
Yeah, absolutely. In my own therapy work, my therapist has a psychoanalytic institute training, and his approach is always like, and we do a lot of dream work together, and his approach is always, well, what stands out for you in the dream? Like what that's like the entry point usually.
Mm-hmm.
So I already know, like when I bring a dream, I just get to the dream and I'm like, and what stood out for me is such and
Yeah,
such, right? Yeah. Um, so for people who have not done dream work before, you already mentioned one suggestion, which is to journal, to write them down.
mm-hmm.
I imagine writing them down as soon as you possibly can is a good idea. Can you talk a little bit about that and and how memory works with dreams?
Sure, sure. So, as you probably know, during we go through these cycles. They're about 2-hour cycles during the night, and during part of that cycle, we have REM activity. That's usually when that's rapid eye movement activity, and that's when we're thought to be dreaming. And it probably is true. That's when we're dreaming. So if you sleep through a night, let's say you sleep 8 hours, you're probably not going to remember the dreams that took place in the middle of the night, unless you wake up from them. Then you might. But almost everyone, at least for a few seconds after they wake up, will remember the dream they have right before they wake up. And most of us are dreaming right before we wake up. So it's good to have something handy to write it down, because the memories fade in seconds. They will fade unless you just grab it and say, wait a minute, what was going on here, and really
Mhm.
mull it over in your mind. So you have seconds to do this, but it's time enough. So you can either write them down. I still write them down longhand, which is crazy in this day and age, but you can also record them on your phone.
Mhm.
Um, uh, that's a good way to do it because you don't have to get any writing implements out. On the other hand, I found that when you record them on your phone, you're still half awake, so your voice may not be the clearest. You might not be able to hear what you recorded on the phone. So you have to do what works for you. But interestingly, when I encourage people to write down their dreams, sometimes people will tell me, I never dream," which we know isn't true.
Right.
So I'll just say to them, well, look, you are dreaming, you're just not aware of it, and you're not concentrating on remembering it. So I really just have people give themselves a little, what we would call a post-hypnotic suggestion before they go to sleep. Just
Mhm.
as you're going to sleep, just say to yourself, I will remember my dreams. I will remember them. I will remember them and write them down. That's a very powerful suggestion, and it almost always works. I,
Mhm.
I've never had somebody come back to me and say, I still can't remember any dreams. They remember something. Um, so, uh, so the idea is, get it down on paper or record it or any way you can. You want to memorialize it so you can look at it later. You know, get and more details the better. You know,
Mhm.
and you said a very important thing. You said, well, what stood out for you in this dream? Well, ask yourself that. What stood out for me in this dream? And why is it important? Another important thing to think about is, how did this dream make me feel? How was I
Mhm.
feeling about it? How did I feel
Right.
about it when I woke up? When I woke up, was I in a sweat? Was I fearful? Was my heart racing? Or was I laughing? Or was I confused? Or was any number of things? Those are all clues to what is going on. So those are all important questions to ask. But the actual writing down is what lets you go back and look at what you've written down and think, okay, what was going on here? What's the story that's going on here? And how does that relate to my life, to what's going on in my life? And more often than not, just like Jack Nicklaus, it's going to relate to something that's going on in your life at present. It's going to relate to something that's going on at present that your mind, your unconscious mind is going to suggest solutions or different ways of looking at that your conscious mind did not.
Awesome. Yeah. Good stuff. So since you are a therapist who has a particular interest in dreams and working with clients around dreams, is there any pattern that you've seen in your practice over time? Is there a particular material that keeps surfacing and maybe pointing to something either culturally, or have there been cases where like you started seeing more, like a bunch of clients dreaming about some particular kind of theme because of what's happening in the news or, anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I do, in the past, I'd say, I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe, I do see people, because, and you mentioned the news, because things are so polarized.
Mm-hmm.
I see people fighting with this. I see people expressing an inner turmoil over this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially because these kinds of, it's crazy to say, but these kinds of political positions and things like that have actually broken up families.
Right.
Families refuse to talk to other family members because of the way they voted or what they said. So yes, I'm seeing a lot more of that, even outside dream work, but certainly the dreams reflect it too. The dreams I see reflect that too. And as soon as I say, like this is about this conflict, about what you were telling me about, how your brother-in-law said, "I'll never speak to you again because you voted for Trump or you voted for
Mm-hmm.
Biden or whoever you voted for." Yes, unfortunately that happens, but fortunately it happens too because it calls our mind's attention to, hey, our mind likes to kind of smack us upside the head and say, hey, there's
Mm-hmm.
something significant going on here. You need to pay attention to it.
Right.
And that's one of the most important things that I can relate to your listeners, who, whether the therapist or not, is it's really the emotion that accompanies the dream that's the biggest clue.
Mm-hmm.
It's the emotion that accompanies the dream.
Yeah.
Um, once you delve into that, why did you feel it? What made you feel that way? And sometimes it is a symbol,
Mm-hmm.
but many times it's just an idea. It's just an idea that the conscious mind would never entertain, but the unconscious mind did.
Exactly. Exactly. Some people are afraid of this particular arena because, and are afraid of therapy in general, right?
True.
Because they're afraid of what they might find, that they might look too closely at their inner life, and they have a fear of what they might uncover. How do you, as a therapist, hold that fear, and how do you make it safe to go there?
Okay. So that's interesting, because that's one of the reactions I get when, just even when I talk about, hey, I've written a book about dream interpretation. Oh man, I even want to think about what's going on in my dreams, and they're half kidding, but only half kidding.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
really don't want to think about. And one of the things I try to do is let them know. Number one, you're not alone. We all have, when we're in grad school, we have these things that we do studies on. And one of the things that we did studies on was things that people think but they don't express. And one of those was, and I'm not remembering it exactly, but I'll paraphrase it. Outside I appear calm, but
Mm-hmm.
inside I'm a raging inferno. And if people knew what was going on inside me, they would run away. Okay. So a lot of people agreed with that. A lot of
Yeah.
college students, obviously, because that's where we do our studies in psychology, but
Right.
a lot of them agreed with that.
Mm.
And so that's the reaction you're seeing when people say, "Oh man, what will my dreams reveal?" Well, you don't want to know the stuff that's going on inside here. Obviously, if they're in therapy, yeah, I do want to know the stuff that's going inside, because that stuff that's going on inside you is what's guiding your actions or influencing your actions or causing you to say and do things that you really don't want to do, but you're doing anyway. Those are really important things. So if you let people know that it's important, and by the way, it's not going to hurt you. And by the way, and of course, you're in therapy. Anything you tell me, I cannot tell anyone else. All those kinds of things. Yes. Usually people just need a little bit of reassurance that no, this is, it's not going to mean we lock you up somewhere. It's just going to mean that we get a better idea what's going on in your mind so that we can help you get to a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like the old saying, more information is almost always good, right? Like having more insight,
Yeah.
being able to, it doesn't mean you have to like suddenly, like if some revelation comes to you or some insight comes to you, you don't have to like suddenly change your whole life. It's just another
Mm-hmm.
piece of information to sort of integrate, and
Yes.
doing it slowly is actually healthier, actually. So, and that's where
Yeah.
a good therapist, uh, will provide the container and the space to be able to do that safely.
Yeah. The idea of the safe space, that's very important. That's very important indeed. You're right.
So going on the other end of dreams, is there such a thing as over interpreting a dream, attaching too much meaning, going too far? And how do you know if you've crossed that line?
So the answer is yes. And how do you know if you've gone too far? Well, it depends. Sometimes people will you'll be discussing a client. You'll be discussing the interpretation. As I said, the client's the best interpreter, but you'll see them go off on a rabbit trail, and that reminds me of something else that happened to me when I was 6 years old. And he or she will tell you their experience, and you realize this has nothing to do with what you've been talking about. It's really kind of like any discussion you have, like when you have a group discussion and somebody
Mm-hmm.
kind of wanders off down a rabbit trail. It's like, okay, but let's get back to what we agreed the theme of your dream is. Let's
Mm-hmm.
get back to that. Let's not over what you said, overinterpret, or let's not misinterpret what's going on here. Let's stay right with what you said, because you and I both agreed this dream is really about, your childhood experience with your sister, your brother, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also imagine that there are cases where individuals are trying to perhaps sway their therapists in a particular way of thinking about them. Yeah, you're laughing. So I've
Yeah.
obviously hit something that you've also experienced,
Yes.
which they then throw this dream out as a way to kind of hook you, because they know that, oh, you're interested in dreams, and so this will be more
Hmm.
tempting for you. It's like fishing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's very funny. Well, number one, research has shown that the number one thing clients want from their therapist is they want their therapist to like them.
Yes.
The number one thing. They
Yeah.
want you to like them. Uh, so it's not at all surprising that someone, if they knew that about me, oh yeah, you're very interested in dreams, and it wouldn't be unusual for them to either manufacture a dream or embellish a dream, or so in my own practice, when people, if I haven't asked them about dreams and they start telling me about a dream,
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of take it at face value. I'm not really delving deep into that one, because especially, and it usually happens at the beginning of the therapeutic relationship, because if it's happening then, we really haven't gone into anything yet, and it may have great meaning for you. And if it's a recurrent dream, obviously we want to look into that. But if not, okay, I'm just really looking at whatever you say, I'm looking at it as part of the story you're telling me. And I understand you want me to like you. And yeah, great. We're going to talk about dreams. So but let's start with with the dreams that you have starting tonight is usually what I'll say.
Yeah.
Let's do that so
Right.
that I don't have to refer back to this dream that may or may not be manufactured or embellished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. All right, Ara, we're going to now move into, I like to do this little lightning round where I just kind of ask some sporadic questions, and then whatever comes to mind, let me know what your thoughts are on the question.
Kind of our video word association here. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with, could you tell us about a recurring dream that you've had that you're willing to share?
Okay. That's a tough one. So I can tell you about a recurring theme. I don't know if it's
good.
the same.
Perfect. Yes.
So my recurring theme is, driving. I always is driving and driving fast and driving in a fast car or even some jet propelled or rocket propelled vehicle and trying to keep it under control. That's
so
that's
funny.
kind of that's kind of
Wow.
I've had dreams like that many times, and in various forms, but always it's that theme, and so I wake up from those dreams laughing because I think, there I am again.
That's awesome.
What am I trying to do? And it's always it's funny because I never crash in these dreams, but I'm always afraid that I will crash, and I'm going really fast, and sometimes I'm just shooting off into space. Sometimes I'm on a roadway, and it's it's different in those ways. But it's and there's lots of ways to look at that, of course. And so I try and look at it as, well, why am I having it now? I know I've had this before, but why now? Because it's not like I have those every night. And usually it's because in some way I'm trying to get ahead of myself or I'm pushing ahead too fast and with something or someone. And I need to kind of, whoa, let me throttle it back a little bit. Let's put it in lower gear and see what we can do here. So that'd be a good example for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell us one thing that you think Freud got right about dreams.
Okay, so the one thing Freud got right about dreams is sometimes they are wish fulfillment. Okay, so sometimes it's like it's and it's their wish fulfillment in the sense that, gee, what if I really did do that? What would that look like? Okay. Oh, so what would happen and what would it feel like? So sometimes that does happen. Yeah, Freud was not altogether wrong about that. He does everything in dreams relate to sexual issues? No, it doesn't. As he himself once said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. It's simple. So that's what I would say with that. Yes.
And then one thing that you think he got wrong.
All right. So the one thing he got wrong is no, everything is not related to sex and sexual relations and no, not everything is, and that's okay. I mean, that was his thing. Right. It was, it's how he made his living. So I don't hold it against him, but and it's interesting because I just did a conference. I was a speaker at a conference of old school techniques. Okay, so my old school technique, of course, was dream interpretations, but I was also on a panel, Freud versus Jung panel, which was quite. Yes, it was quite interesting. I was on the Jung side, which is good because I couldn't really defend Freud very well. But yeah, the Freudians are still around, and they're still, and look, Freud's, especially his discovery or his realization of the unconscious mind is like, the bedrock on which everything we do is built. So much as we might want to say, hey, he was wrong about this and wrong about that, he was totally right about the unconscious mind. He got that 100% correct.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually can't quite see it. It's actually like right there. There's like 3 books like right around there. One of them is the second printing of Interpretation of Dreams. And so
Ah,
my next question is, what, other than your own book, what is the best
mhm.
book on dreams that you have come across?
I would say that the best book on dreams I've come across is Jung's book, Man and His Symbols.
Okay.
Because it's a
Great.
book that could be read by therapists, and you as therapists would get a lot out of it. But it also
Mhm.
could be read by somebody who's never been a therapist or never been in therapy,
Mhm.
and it sheds light on the processes and the whole idea of symbols, and how they are really important in our lives and how they contributed to it. And the book, I don't know if you've read it or not, but
Mhm.
it's by him, but there are essays in it that are written by other therapists,
Mhm.
and so they get into some of these issues that they don't get into the weeds. They just get, it's really written for a popular audience,
Right.
which is good, which is good.
Yeah.
So the things we're talking about today really brings them to life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that suggestion. That's a good one.
Mm.
It's been a while since
Yeah.
I've read that, so yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, one last question. Unfortunately, we're wrapping up on time here, but for any skeptics who are out there who have never taken their dreams seriously, what's one
Mhm.
question you'd want them to sit with tonight?
Hmm. All right. So if you've never taken your dreams seriously, what I would say is, all right, so what about those times? Because we've all had them when you had a nightmare, right? Um, so when you awoke, or why when you woke from that nightmare, how were you feeling? Was your heart racing? Were you sweating? Were you anxious? How can you not take that seriously? Um, Obviously, unless something was physically going on with you, how can you not take that seriously? So your mind really is trying to tell you something, and it's just a matter of paying attention sometimes and really taking a look at it. And writing it down obviously is the first step. Um, and then, in my book, I offer a kind of a step by step. Once you write down your dreams, step by step as to how to work through it and find the themes and find the story. But it's really, if you don't ever believe that, if you think that's totally unimportant, that's really the question to ask. Well, what about those times when it really was important to you? It got you so upset.
Right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Good advice. So for our listeners out there who are wanting to learn more about you and want to buy your
Mhm.
book, of course, so we'll have all the information in the show notes, but can you just say where they can find those things?
Sure. Okay. So the name of the book is Dreaming God's Way. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've taken the methodology used in scripture and really applied it to dream interpretation. So it's Dreaming God's Way, and it's available all the places that we get books, which is Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Tune. Yes, there's a Kindle version. It's all over the place. Dreaming God's Way. I would definitely recommend you take a look. And it's not a long book, and it's not just for therapists.
Awesome. Awesome. Ara, it has been an absolute pleasure having you and talking about dreams. It is one of my favorite topics as well. And it's definitely one of
Mhm.
the things I bring into the work with my clients and
Wonderful.
with my own work. So I'm excited to be talking about that first thing this morning. So, for our listeners out there, here's what I want you to take away from the episode, regardless of where you're coming from. The unconscious mind is working all the time. It's processing your day, it's consolidating your memories, it's sitting with those unresolved things you didn't have language for while you were awake. And for most of us in our therapeutic training as therapists, we've treated that process as background noise. What if it's not noise? As Aris just said, what if it's a signal? What if it is something important that your mind is trying to tell you? And you don't have to subscribe to any particular framework to find value in paying attention to your dreams. You just have to be willing to ask, What is my mind trying to tell me? And that might be the most underutilized therapeutic question in the room. Ara's book is Dreaming God's Way. The link and all the description is in the show notes. If this conversation opened something for you, go find the book, but also feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. My name is Dominic Adori, and this has been Metatherapy Thursday Thinkers. I'll see you next week.